Okay, this is going to be a little bit of an intro into the basic commands we use to do Docker. Um, I'm already logged into a machine here. This is CentOS and it already has Docker installed. Docker simple, just plain old Docker. Now, a lot of the things that I've been experimenting with lately have been running Microsoft products on top of the Docker thing, but that's not going to be this. We're not going to be that centric for this. This is just general stuff. So Docker is a runtime. I don't need to go into all of that. I think I've already covered all this. And the bottom line is that this is just the basic Docker commands that we're going to use. The first one we're going to use is Docker pull. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. Okay. So use Docker pull to download a copy of a Docker image from GitHub, or not GitHub, from docker.io or Docker, the Docker registry, onto your machine. So the way we do that is we just issue the Docker pull command and then CentOS, for example, and we're going to use a tag. Now these tags tell you typically reversion, so I want CentOS 7, so let's go ahead and pull that. Okay, this one's up to date, so let's pull CentOS 8. And there we go. Same difference. All right, how about Ubuntu? Ubuntu 14? Okay. 16 probably. Let's just do Ubuntu latest. Okay, so this brings up an important thing. You can look this stuff up in Docker.io and do searches for these container names. Also, there are other registries like Microsoft does one at mcr.microsoft.com. And in order to pull an image from a specific registry, all you have to do is put the registry URL in front. For example, if I wanted to pull one of the Microsoft SQL Server images, I would do something like this. And that's obviously the host name, URL, the container, and then the particular container path and a specific tag for it. So let me see if I can just pull latest. Latest is almost, it's already updated. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run one of these. -IT. Let's talk about that. IT means do it interactive. You give me a terminal. Okay. And then you can do, this one will be CentOS, and then we're going to call CentOS. So what happens is it's actually going to check for the container, run it, and you notice how fast it was. So this prompt is actually the host name right here, and we're actually running bash in CentOS. Something else I want to explain to you real quickly. You notice that the overlay file system is 22 gig available, 27% used. So let's exit the container. You notice that there's nothing running. That's the Docker PS command. That shows how many, shows the containers that are running. And then we're talking, and then we'll do a df real quick. So this is on my virtualization host. And again, I want you to notice 7.7 gig, 22 gig. So the overlay file system basically creates a file system in varlib docker under containers for each container. Now, so you notice that I ran a container and I stopped it here, and I named it CentOS. But that means it's in a stop state. So Docker start CentOS should start that same container. Now it's running Docker PS. So there's a start and a stop command. You notice this guy is still running. Okay. what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this CentOS container. Okay. Now you notice it's not running. But let's say we have one running in the background, like that, and I want to connect to it. So Docker exec, exec, that means execute a command. And what we're going to do is pick the CentOS image, not the CentOS image, but the actual instance that's running, okay? And its name is CentOS, and we're going to run the bash command. Hold on. I think I have to do an IT. There we go. So I'm connected to the same instance that was running before. So you can stop and start containers without destroying their file systems, just so that people know. Now, let's exit this. Stop the container. Okay. And then we're going to Docker container. Well, let's just do rm CentOS. So you notice that that container has been removed. That actually removes the file system. So, all right, one of the real quick things I wanted to show you was how to clear the disk space that's being used by unrunning containers. So we're going to make sure nothing is running. Nothing is running. And there's a command. Where is it? There it is. Docker system -a. So what happens is that a real quick explanation. As you do a Docker pull and a Docker start, a copy of those containers, a copy of those images are kept on your local machine. And then when you create instances, for example, if you see I was running Nginx, Ubuntu, and CentOS at some point in time on this. As you create images, it creates layers. This is the overlay file system for those images on your local machine, and those take up space over time. So periodically, if you're getting low on disk space and you have a bunch of containers that are defunct or not running anymore, you can clean those up by just doing a Docker system -a, and that just -a just means everything. Okay, so what that means is we're starting from scratch, and I think I demonstrated the Docker pull command. We're going to pull the latest version of Nginx. Okay. So what it's doing is it's grabbing a copy of that from the Docker Hub and extracting it and creating the local layers of that Docker image. So this will be a default instance, a brand new fresh instance of Nginx. And we talked a little bit about tags. This particular Nginx is already, you'll notice that it pulls the latest tag. That's the default tag. You can specify a version or whatnot, and those version numbers are specific to whoever builds the engine. So the tags are created just like that. So we have an Nginx copy locally. Let's say I wanted to run that. I would just use, and we're going to call we're going to say Docker run -d, which means run in the background, -p, which means uses the port, and it maps the internal port to the external port. So the host port to the container port, 8080, and we're going to name that container Nginx, and we're going to use the image Nginx. Now you'll notice I can say Nginx latest here as well. So that's a tag. Notice it just comes back and says, hey, here's the, this is the container name. It's actually a SHA-256, and that's for the image that's running. Now, if you look, we'll do a Docker PS. That'll show that actually running, and the name is Nginx. So you'll note there's something here interesting. It says ports. So we're mapping everything on port 80 to 80 TCP. Now, by default, it's going to use host networking. What that means is it's going to use the port on the external network interface on your machine. So if I do an IPA and I pick out the fact that I'm running on this IP address, or any of these IPv6 addresses, but in particular, I'm going to use the IPv4 address, 76. And then I flip over to a browser. I've already got it up. But you notice I can hit refresh, and it actually refreshes the page, and Nginx is indeed running. And you have access to it from outside the virtual machine, or the Docker container. Now, let's say I wanted to create something new. We're actually gonna see what happens when I try to connect to this machine. So Docker exec IT Ubuntu, Nginx, and we're gonna say bash. I'm gonna run bash on it, see if it runs there. So it does. Now at this point, you would refer to the Docker, the Nginx container documentation to tell you where the file system is, I think, or the file system for Nginx. And we can do that by, what we're trying to figure out is where I want to put content to change this. And what we'll do is we'll say Nginx container, just search for that real quick. Should be able to pull up the Docker Hub page on it, and kaplow. You have all your information. By the way, remember I mentioned tags. This tells you what all the tags are, and this tells you a lot of information for quick references. Okay, and here's some simple static content, right? So this is using a volume, a read-only, from a local file, and it's mounting it under some content. Or you can create a Docker file for it. In this particular case, we're going to copy this directory to user share Nginx HTML. So we know that's where the HTML page is. This is what I want to do. I'm going to copy this. I want to demonstrate something for you. Containers are ephemeral. Okay. See, there's an index.html. We're going to move that. Actually, we're going to copy it. Then I'm going to edit the index. Value's not there. This is, I don't know what base this is. Apt install. Yeah. Now you notice none of this is working. I'm going to show you why. It's because I haven't defined a network for it. And I haven't defined DNS server. So we're going to exit this. We can fix this by telling the container different arguments, all right, to the Docker command. So we're going to do Docker stop Nginx. So we're going to stop the container, show it's not running. And we're going to remove that container. Now, I'm going to restart the container with a couple of different things. Now, we know its name is Nginx, but we're going to do DNS, and we're going to give it a DNS server. And we're also going to give it a network mode called host. So let's run that now. And then you notice this thing, the published ports are discarded when using host network mode. Basically, it connects it'll ignore this, and whatever the Docker container is set to expose, which we'll talk about when we talk about Docker files, is what it'll use to connect to the network. So we know that's running, so we'll do Docker PS. Look at that. But you notice it doesn't have any information in the ports. So this is where it gets a little bit esoteric. You need to know where it works. So now I'm going to connect to that particular container. You notice it says CentOS 1 now, but that's because it's using host networking. So it's using the host network name and everything. Yep, that's the way it works. Apt install vim. Now you notice it's actually retrieving and talking to the network. Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's particularly fast, isn't it? Anyway, while I get Vi installed, I'm going to pause the recording here. Okay, so now we have Vi installed. And remember, the idea was to change some of the content. So, and remember where that was. User share Nginx HTML. So you still need to know, even though Docker containerizes a bunch of this stuff, you still need to know where things are. So we're going to copy. Now, you'll notice I made some changes. I did a copy of this file, and then I shut down the container, removed it, and recreated the container. Local changes are not persisted, and that's the point of this exercise. I don't need that. Okay, we'll copy that off. I'm going to open this up. And you got just standard old welcome to Nginx. And if you'll recall, we hit that web page from outside the container here, and you get this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to real-time change the content and see what happens. So I can go into a running container and modify the modify files on the file system and affect the runtime activities as it's running. But remember, this is only on this particular instance. Okay. Now I've created that, I've done that, and I've exited the container. Notice that's still running, and it's been up for 4 minutes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit that web page, and I should see hello there at the end of it. So that's essentially what we're going to be doing. Now there's a couple different ways to put content into an image. All right, so let's stop this image. And let's do this purge thing. See what happens. Oh, actually, let's run another one. Oops. Now, what did you notice? It says the container name is already in use by a container. Even though it's stopped, it's preserving that image. That's why you have to do a Docker rm Nginx. And now if I run it again, remember we got that warning because we're using host networking. Okay. And we have Docker running, or Nginx running again. Now, if I go back, so what I've done is just stop, remove the current instance, and restarted it. Now, this is important when we get into Docker, Docker management. So, and I'll explain that a little bit more in detail later in a later video. But you notice now when I refresh, the content is reverted back to the default content. But let's say we wanted to use a build file, okay, and we wanted to, so let's Docker stop Nginx, Docker rm Nginx, so we can name the thing the same thing later on. So we're going to make a directory, cd temp And I've already created a Docker file here. So what I'm doing is I'm actually creating a list of instructions on how to build my own instance of that particular container. A container, remember, a container is a list of a bunch of layers. So we're gonna look at this real quick. And okay, I was working on .NET Asp, but what we're gonna do, oops. Okay, so what we're gonna do is change this to Nginx latest. We'll talk more about that. And then we're gonna use the copy command. And we're gonna copy index.html to, this is the local file system, to, hold on a second. Oops. The path of which I can never remember these paths. There's too many. We'll go back here. There we go. I know I copied it. There we go. So we're going to copy that into that directory. And because I like to be specific, I'm going to actually say that. Okay. And that's all we're going to do. So we're going to change the content. Well, I guess we're going to actually need an index.html file. All right, we're going to just snatch from the other one. This is a cheap trick that that I've used before. And we're just going to copy this. So if you want a basic web page, you can create it this way. All right, and that's all of that stuff. Now, what we're going to say is that welcome to our custom page. Okay, so welcome to our custom index.html page in Nginx. Got it? Now, we're going to talk about tagging. So this next command, docker build, will create a new instance of a container from a container. So what we're going to do is a docker build, and you have to give it a path. So we're going to use the current directory. So what has happened here is it's grabbed this layer, which is Nginx latest. It copied this into this, which created a new layer and exposed that path. And then it removed the intermediate container, which is the container it created called Nginx latest. And then it successfully built that. So now what we've got, new command for you, docker image ls. You notice that we have this image with no repository, no tag, but it does have an image ID. And then we have the original Nginx container. Okay, so this is actually layered on top of that, and it does not reuse different. It doesn't copy the files. It'll if the hash for that file system matches, it'll just refer to that file system. Okay, so it's very efficient in using file systems. Now, so what we got is we got this new container. Let's run it. Okay, so we're going to run it as Nginx, but we're going to run it instead of running Nginx latest, we're going to run this particular image. Okay. Published ports are discarded. I keep forgetting that. But Docker PS will now show you, oh look, this image, the one we just built, using that name is now running. And if we flip over to our particular, let's close that thing and refresh this page, you'll notice it now says custom indexed HTML page in Nginx. Cool. So that's how we actually build. That's a very simplistic thing of how you build static content that doesn't change on Docker. All right. I'm going to pause now and prepare the next section.